Hello, this is Mr. Bowlby. We are in CKLA Domain 1, The Wind and the Willows, Lesson 6, Dulce Domum, Part 1. Just to review our plot using some pictures, our story began, of course, with the rat and mole meeting each other and discussing the wild wood. Rat making mole feel at home in his house. Rat and mole's adventure with Toad on the open road. Mole going off into the wildwood to find Badger on his own, and Rat coming to his rescue. Followed by them meeting Mr. Badger and having a lovely time in his house for a little while, and then finally making their way home, or out of Mr. Badger's house, back toward their home. What kind of character is Badger? It's a good question for you to think about. Write down a response and just think about a little bit. Is he friendly? Is he kind? Is he honorable? Those kinds of things. What kind of person is he? What kind of character? Or you could also refer to just, is he a secondary character in the story? The main character in the story? So far, we haven't really spent too much time talking about him other than this episode and his last chapter that we had where we met him. Today's chapter is called Dulce Domum. Dulce Domum is Latin for home sweet home. So the phrase home sweet home is similar to the saying, there's no place like home. What do you think this saying means? Feel free to write down your response in your journals and what it means to you. We will be discussing that further. Some key vocabulary for you to get down for this lesson: advance, recollection, reproached, subtle, and unerring. Not long after their adventures in the wildwood, the rat and mole found themselves plodding silently along a country lane. The rapid nightfall of mid-December had already descended upon them. The mole was thinking of supper as he followed obediently behind the rat, leaving the guidance of the darkness entirely to him. As for Rat, he was walking a little way ahead, as was his habit. He walked steadily, with his shoulders humped, his eyes fixed on the straight gray road in front of him. This is why he did not notice poor Mole when suddenly something soft and subtle, carried gently upon the cool night air, caused Mole to stop dead in his tracks. It was one of these mysterious sensory moments suddenly reached the Mole in the darkness. It made him tingle through and through with its familiar appeal, even though he could not clearly remember what it was. Having stopped suddenly in the pitch black of night, his nose searched hither and thither in effort to recapture the vague scent that had so strongly moved him. A moment that he had caught it again. And with that, this time came recollection in fullest flood. Home! The essence of which wafted through the air. Why, it must be quite close by him at that moment. His old home, the one he had forsaken and never sought again, that day when he first found the river, and now it was sending out its scouts and its messengers to capture him and bring him in. Since his escape on that bright morning, Mole had hardly given it a thought, so absorbed was he in his new life, with all its pleasures, surprises, and captivating experiences. Now with the rush of old memories, how clearly it stood up before him in the darkness. Shabby indeed, and small, poorly furnished, and yet it was his. It was the home he had made for himself, the home he had been so happy to get back to after his day's work, and the home had been happy with him too, evidently, and was missing him and wanted him back. The call was clear, the summons was plain. He must obey it instantly and go. "Ratty!" he called, full of joyful excitement. "Hold on! Come back!" "Oh, come along, Mole, do," replied Rat cheerfully, still plodding along. "Please stop, Ratty," pleaded poor Mole in anguished heart. "You don't understand. It's my home, my old home. I've just come across the smell of it, and it's close by. I must go to it, I must. Oh, come back, Ratty, please come back." The Rat was by this time very far ahead, too far to hear clearly that the Mole was calling. He was also too far away to catch the sharp note of painful appeal in his voice, and he was much taken up with the weather, for he too could smell something suspiciously like approaching snow. Mole, we mustn't stop now, really, he called back. We'll come for it tomorrow, whatever it is you found. But I daren't stop now. It's late, and the snow's coming on again, and I'm not sure of the way. So come on quick, there's a good fellow. And the rat pressed forward on his way, without waiting for an answer. Poor Mole stood alone in the road, his heart torn asunder, and a big sob gathering somewhere low down inside him. But even under such a test of his loyalty to his friend stood firm. Never for a moment did Mole dream of abandoning Rat. Meanwhile, the waifs from his old home pleaded and whispered to him. He dared not tarry longer within their magic circle. With a wrench that tore his very heartstrings, he set his face down on the road and followed submissively in the track of Rat, while faint little smells reproached him for his new friendship and his forgetfulness. With an effort, he caught up to the unsuspecting Rat, who began chattering cheerfully about what they would do when they got back. In the midst of his descriptive fervor, the Rat failed to notice his companion's silence and despair. At last, however, when they had gone some considerable way further, he stopped and said kindly, "Look here, Mole, old chap, you seem dead tired. No talk left in you, and your feet dragging like lead. We'll sit down for a minute to rest. The snow has held off so far, and the best part of our journey is over." The Mole rested forlornly on a tree stump, and tried to control himself, for he felt it's surely coming. The sob he had fought with so long refused to be beaten. Up and up it forced its way to the air, and then another, till poor Mole had at last gave up the struggle and cried freely and helplessly. The Rat, astonished and dismayed at the violence of Mole's grief, did not dare to speak for a while. At last he said very quietly and sympathetically, "What is it, old fellow? Whatever could be the matter? Tell us your trouble and let me see what I can do." Poor Mole found it difficult to get any words out between such heavy sobs. "I know it's a shabby, dingy little place," he sobbed forth at last, brokenly. "Not like your cozy quarters, or Toad's beautiful hall, or Badger's great house. But it was my own little home, and I was fond of it. And I went away and forgot all about it. And I smelt it suddenly, on the road, when I called you and you wouldn't listen, Rat, and everything came back to me with a rush, and I wanted it, oh dear. And you wouldn't come back, Ratty, and I had to leave it, though I was smelling it all the time. I thought my heart would break. We might have just gone and had one look at it, Ratty, only one look. It was close by, but you wouldn't turn back, Ratty, you wouldn't turn back, oh dear. Recollection brought fresh waves of sorrow, and sobs again took full charge of him, preventing further speech. The Rat stared straight in front of him, saying nothing, only patting Mole gently on the shoulder. After a time he muttered gloomily, "I see it all now. What a pig I have been. Just a pig, a plain pig." He waited till Mole's sobs became gradually less stormy and more rhythmically. He waited till at last sniffs were frequent and sobs only intermittent. Then he rose from his seat and remarked carelessly, "Well, now we'd really better be getting on, old chap." With that, Rat set off up the road and they had just traveled upon. "Where are you going, Ratty?" cried the tearful Mole, looking up in alarm. "We're going to find that home of yours, old fellow," replied Rat pleasantly. "So you'd better come along, for it'll take some finding, and we shall want your nose." "Oh, come back, Ratty, do," cried Mole, getting up and hurrying after him. "It's no good, I tell you. It's too late and too dark, and the place is too far off, and the snow's coming. And I never meant to let you know I was feeling about the way I was. The way about it. It was all an accident and a mistake. And I think of the riverbank and your supper." "Hang riverbank and supper too," said Rat heartily. "I tell you, I'm going to find this place now, if I stay out all night. So cheer up, old chap, and take my arm, and we'll very soon be back there again." Still snuffling, pleading, and reluctant, Mole suffered himself to be dragged back along the road by his companion. When at last it seemed to the Rat that they must be nearing the part of the road where the Mole had been held up, he had said, "Now, no more talking, business. Use your nose and give your mind to it." They moved on in silence for some little way. Suddenly the Rat was conscious, though his arm, that was linked in Mole's, of a faint sort of electric thrill that was passing down the animal's body. Instantly he disengaged himself, fell back a pace, and waited. The signals were coming through. Mole stood a moment rigid, while his uplifted nose, quivering slightly felt the air. Then he shot a quick run forward, a fault, a check, a try back, and then slow, steady, confident advance. The rat, much excited, kept close to his heels, as the mole, with something of air of a sleepwalker, crossed a dry ditch, scrambling through the hedge and nosed his way over the field. Suddenly, without giving warning, Mole dived, but the rat was on alert and promptly followed him down the tunnel, to which his unerring nose had faithfully led him. In the read aloud today, you heard that Mole and Rat were returning home after being out all day. On their way back home, with Rat leading the way, the Mole following obediently behind, Mole came across something soft and subtle. Describe what Mole notices. Mole smells his home. He realizes how much he misses it and wants to see it. Mole's experience is a strong recollection of his home. It's amazing what kind of things will bring back memories. A smell, a sound, a sight of something. All of those memories come reloading into your brain because they're all stuck in there already. And sometimes it's the sensory that helps us, our senses help bring those things back. Now, Rat initially continues his advance toward his own home instead of stopping with Mole. Why? Well, Rat is moving fast because he wants to be home as quickly as possible, because he smells snow on the way. He gets so far ahead of Mole he can't hear Mole yelling after him. When Mole does catch up with Rat, Mole breaks down into tears. Why? Why is Mole so upset? Because Mole is torn between wanting to see his old home and his friendship with Rat. Mole thinks Rat wouldn't want to go to Mole's home. Mole feels reproach for forgetfulness when he smells his long lost home. Rat decided to go back and find Mole's home, even though Rat is hungry and cold. Which theme do you think fits in this part of the story? Rat decided to go back to Mole to help Mole find his home. That would be a good example of friendship. We've learned a lot about friendship and loyalty in these stories, in these chapters of The Wind and the Willows. Other are also good. How does Mole find his home in all the snow? There's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of snow. Now, if I were Mole, I would have to have a really good nose, and that is the answer. He has an unerring nose. He doesn't make mistakes. He knows where he is going. He knows if he's been there before. Somehow, his little nose is able to sniff it out. Do you think Mole's excellent sense of smell is an example of personification? No. Why? Why is it not a good example of personification? Moles, like many animals, really do have an acute sense of smell, much stronger than humans. That is why if you go to the hardware store, you can find chemicals that you can spray in your yard to keep moles away. There's a certain smell in there that they'll keep them from coming into your yard, destroying your grass and your garden area. Anyway, it's a good gardening tip of the day. There we go. Now, whose perspective is this read aloud told from? Remember, perspective is who the story is being told from, whose eyes we're seeing it through, whose ears were hearing it, whose nose were smelling it. Moles, very good. The reader sees everything through Mole's eyes, knows how he feels, knows what he's thinking, sees what he does, etc. I'm going to ask you a question. I'll give you a minute to think about the question. Then I will ask you to turn to your neighbor and discuss the question. Finally, I will call on several of you to share with what you discussed with your partner. How would you feel if you were a mole in this part of the story? After taking some answers from that, we move on to our word work. This is the word of this lesson. Every lesson has a word that we pinpoint. This one is reproached. In the read aloud, you heard, with a wrench that tore his very heartstrings, he, being the mole, set his face down on the road, followed submissively in the track of the rat, while faint little smells reproached him for his new friendship and his forgetfulness. Reproached means scolded, corrected, or expressed disappointment in someone for a certain behavior. Example: as a baby, James was never reproached for making a mess while eating, but as he grew older, he learned there were certain rules to follow at the dinner table. Have you ever reproached someone for behavior that disappointed you? Have you ever been reproached by someone? Be sure to use the word reproached when you tell about it. And at this point, I'll ask 2 or 3 students to use reproached in a phrase. For example, I was reproached for, or I reproached once when, or I reproached for. Okay. Written responses are acceptable as well. Thank you. Antonyms activity. The opposite of reproached is praised. I'm going to read several sentences. If the person or animal I describe in the sentence is being reproached, say, that person, animal, is being reproached. If the person or animal I describe in the sentence is not being reproached, but is instead being praised, say, that person, animal, is being praised. Jenny received many compliments for her prize-winning science fair project. That person is being praised. Luther was scolded for tracking mud throughout the house. That person is being reproached. Olivia gave her cat a treat for coming when she called. I just want to figure out how she managed to train that cat. That animal is being praised. The principal voiced his disappointment to Mark for running in the hallway when he was supposed to be in class. That person is being reproached. Everyone congratulated Jamel on his beautiful new painting. That person is being praised. Lynette spoke sharply to her dog whenever he jumped up on people. That animal is being reproached. Very good. In your Domain 1 listening journal on page 6, write up to a half a page about what makes your home sweet home. Describe your home and your favorite things about your home. Make sure to use descriptive language and, if possible, vocabulary learned thus far. You may also draw illustrations to accompany your sentences. We will share your writings and drawings as time allows. If you do not have a listening journal, write it on a separate piece of paper. Here's an on-stage activity we can do if we have extra time. We're going to act out today's read aloud. Mole and rat. Designate students to be characters. Ask students what settings will be needed. Designate locations in the classroom for various settings. As I read, I'll encourage the characters to listen carefully to know what actions to use, such as mole catching a whiff of his home, rat hurrying ahead, mole crying, etc. Also, use facial expressions to show how the characters are feeling. Remember, with your acting, you think about how you would feel if you were the person you're acting. So mole or rat. You may also create your own dialogue to go along with the story. So this is a great way to extend upon that if we have time. And here is the listening journal page. This is what it looks like, where you would write your paragraph about your home being home sweet home. That is the end of lesson 6 for CKLA Domain 1, The Wind and the Willows for grade 3. Have a good day. See you in the next lesson. Feel free to make comments and suggestions if you have any. Appreciate it. Thank you.